The waitress smiled politely as she led us to a large table near the window. My son had chosen one of the nicest restaurants in the city for a family dinner. It was the first time I would meet the woman he wanted to marry. I looked down at my faded blue jacket. It was old. The sleeves were worn. The shoes on my feet had been polished so many times that the leather had almost disappeared. I knew I looked out of place, but I wasn't embarrassed. For 38 years, I had worked as the night janitor at Lincoln High School. Every hallway I cleaned, every classroom I locked, every student I quietly encouraged. That was my life, including my own son. His name was Daniel. I raised him alone after my wife died when he was just 6. I skipped meals so he could eat, worked double shifts so he could attend college, sold the only car I owned so he could study abroad. And tonight, he wanted me to meet the woman he loved. A few minutes later, she walked in. Elegant, perfect makeup, expensive designer dress, diamond earrings that sparkled every time she smiled. Her name was Vanessa. She hugged Daniel. Then her eyes landed on me. Her smile disappeared. She looked me up and down without saying a word. Finally, she whispered, "Is this your father?" Daniel smiled proudly. "Yes." She forced a fake smile, then sat down. The waiter handed us menus. Everything seemed normal until Vanessa leaned toward Daniel and quietly said words she thought I couldn't hear. "I'd rather leave than sit beside someone who looks homeless." Silence. My hands froze around the menu. For a second, I wondered if I had heard correctly. Then she continued, "You told me your father was retired." Daniel nodded. "He is. I didn't know you meant this." She glanced at my jacket with disgust. People at nearby tables started noticing. I lowered my eyes, not because I was ashamed, because I didn't want my son to lose the woman he loved because of me. So I quietly stood. "I'll wait outside." Before I could take another step, Daniel gently grabbed my arm.
No, Dav.
He looked directly at Vanessa, then reached inside his briefcase. He pulled out a thick sealed envelope, placed it in front of her. "I hoped I'd never need this." She laughed. "What is this supposed to be?" "Open it." Still smiling confidently, she broke the seal. Inside were photographs, letters, certificates, newspaper articles, one after another. Her smile slowly disappeared. The first picture showed me standing beside hundreds of graduating students. The next showed the mayor shaking my hand. Another showed teachers crying while hugging me. Then came dozens of handwritten letters. One read, "Mr. Harris, thank you for stopping me the night I wanted to end my life. Because of you, I'm alive today." Another said, "You secretly paid for my graduation clothes when my family couldn't." Another, "You were never just the janitor. You were the father many of us never had." Vanessa looked confused. "What is all this?" Daniel calmly answered, "The people in those letters? They're now doctors, judges, military officers, business owners. They never forgot the man who believed in them." She stayed silent. Daniel continued, "My father wasn't rich, but every bonus he earned, he used helping students. He never wanted recognition. He just wanted kids to have hope." Vanessa tried to laugh. "So?" Daniel smiled. "Keep reading." She reached the last document. It was a legal letter. Her face instantly turned white. She read it twice, then a third time. It stated that the Lincoln Education Foundation had recently created a scholarship program in my honor. The endowment was worth $42 million. Former students had donated together over 20 years. Not for publicity, not for business, simply to thank the man who had quietly changed their lives. And the board had appointed only one lifetime chairman. Me. Vanessa looked at me as if she were seeing a completely different person.
I'm sorry."
I smiled kindly. "You don't owe me an apology." She looked relieved, until Daniel spoke again.
No.
"You owe yourself one." She looked confused. Daniel leaned forward. "I never cared whether you loved my father. I only cared whether you respected him." And tonight, you showed me exactly who you are. Her voice shook. I didn't mean. You meant every word. The restaurant had become completely silent. Even the waiters had stopped walking. Vanessa reached for Daniel's hand. He quietly moved it away. Then he picked up the engagement ring from the table, placed it inside the empty envelope, and slid it toward her. I was prepared for this. Tears filled her eyes. You're ending this? I can't marry someone who judges people by their clothes. She begged him to reconsider, but his decision had already been made. She slowly stood, walked toward the exit. Halfway there, she turned back. No one looked at her. She left alone. For several minutes, neither of us spoke. Then I sighed.
I'm sorry.
Daniel looked shocked. For what? I feel like I ruined your future. He smiled.
No, Dav.
You protected it. He reached across the table and squeezed my hand. When Mom died, you taught me something. Character is the only wealth that never disappears. I finally proved I learned that lesson. A few weeks later, the story quietly spread. Not because anyone wanted revenge, but because several restaurant guests recognized former students mentioned in those letters. Within days, thousands shared stories online about the old janitor who had secretly changed lives for decades. People I hadn't seen in 20 years began visiting my small house. One brought flowers. Another brought photographs. Some simply wanted to say, thank you. The greatest surprise came one Saturday morning. More than 400 former students gathered at the old high school. Doctors, firefighters, teachers, police officers, engineers, parents, grandparents. Each carried a single white rose. They weren't celebrating a millionaire. They were honoring a man who once believed in them when nobody else did. Daniel stood beside me. You see, Dad, you never cleaned a school. You built futures. As everyone applauded, I realized something. Real dignity doesn't come from expensive clothes. It doesn't come from luxury restaurants. And it certainly doesn't come from money. It comes from the lives you quietly change when no one is watching. Because someday, the people you lifted will become your greatest legacy. And no amount of wealth can ever be greater than that. 3 months passed. Life slowly returned to normal. Daniel went back to work. I returned to my quiet routine, spending mornings in my small garden and afternoons volunteering at the local youth center. I didn't need the recognition or the headlines. Helping people had always been enough. Then one rainy Tuesday afternoon, someone knocked on my front door. When I opened it, Vanessa was standing there. She looked completely different. No expensive jewelry.
No designer clothes. No confident smile.
Just tired eyes filled with regret. I know I don't deserve your time, she said softly. But please, let me explain. I invited her inside. She sat nervously at the kitchen table, staring at the cup of coffee I had placed in front of her. For nearly a minute, neither of us spoke. Finally, she whispered, I grew up believing that money determined a person's worth. My parents judged everyone by their careers, their cars, their clothes. I became exactly like them. She wiped away a tear. And I lost the best man I ever met because of it. I listened quietly. Then I asked, are you here because Daniel left you? Or because you realized you were wrong? The question hit her harder than she expected. She lowered her head. I think both. I nodded. At least you're honest. She reached into her purse and placed another envelope on my table. Inside was a cashier's check. It was for $100,000. I want to donate this to your scholarship fund. I pushed the envelope back toward her.
No.
She looked surprised. You don't need to buy forgiveness. Tears rolled down her face. I don't know how else to make things right. I smiled gently. Then start helping people who can never repay you. For free. For years. One good donation doesn't erase a lifetime of judging others. But a lifetime of kindness. That changes who you are. She quietly nodded. Before leaving, she looked at me one last time. I understand now why Daniel respects you so much. After she left, I never saw her again. Months later, Daniel met someone new. Her name was Emily. She worked as a pediatric nurse. The first time she visited my house, she didn't notice my old furniture. She didn't ask how much money I had. Instead, she noticed my late wife's photograph. She smiled and asked, "Would you tell me what she was like?" For 2 hours we laughed, shared old memories, and looked through family photo albums. When dinner was ready, she insisted on washing the dishes. Not because she had to, because she wanted to. As she dried the last plate, she smiled at Daniel and said, "I understand now where your kindness comes from." Daniel looked at me. Neither of us said a word. We didn't have to. 1 year later, they were married. The ceremony wasn't held in a luxury hotel. It took place in the old high school gymnasium where I had spent nearly 4 decades working. Hundreds of former students volunteered to decorate the building. The principal offered the venue for free. The school band played the music. Former students cooked the food. Others arranged flowers. One former student, now a judge, performed the wedding ceremony. Before Daniel and Emily exchanged vows, the judge smiled and looked toward me. Many people build careers. Some build businesses. But a very rare person builds generations. He pointed toward the audience. Almost everyone sitting here was touched by one quiet man who never asked for recognition. The entire gymnasium stood. Hundreds of people applauded. I couldn't hold back my tears. Not because I felt important, but because I realized something beautiful. The kindness you give away is never really gone. It travels from one life to another until it comes back in ways you could never imagine. As Daniel hugged me after the ceremony, he whispered, "You always said a person's true wealth is measured by the lives they lived." He smiled. "You were richer than all of us, and we just didn't know it." That day, I understood the greatest lesson of my life. People may judge your clothes. They may judge your job. They may judge the house you live in or the car you drive. But the people who truly matter will judge only one thing: the size of your heart. And in the end, that's the only wealth that lasts forever.